Hey everyone, I'm really happy to actually say I did go ahead and get my hands on the Micro-ATX version of the B850 Aorus Ice motherboard by Gigabyte, as you can see here. It's almost a similar thing, pretty much the same thing, just a smaller form factor. And makes you wonder if there's going to be less USB ports or some features that have been removed. So let's go ahead and check it out, get it unboxed, take a look at the board itself, and take a look at the BIOS. So let's hit it. To some degree, I'm actually thinking of pretty much this is the same exact board as the non-M variant, the regular mid-ATX size motherboard that I did a review on already. So I feel like I'm actually going to be repeating myself just a little bit, but this board definitely is obviously a little smaller, and the mini ATX form factor here definitely really useful for the case that I actually do have it in mind for, and you'll definitely see that very shortly. So let's go ahead and take a look at the box back here. Looks absolutely amazing, nice little glacier ice color, and we do see it pretty much still has all the options as the other motherboard, just less PCI Express slots right over here. Probably go ahead and see what other things are as well too, maybe even take a look at if there's a couple of less USB ports in the back. Really nice to see over here, it does have 2.5 gigabit LAN, another little good option there. The little proprietary looking a little Wi-Fi thing. It was mentioned to me in a comment if it's possible to actually go ahead and replace these. And I'm pretty sure some third-party vendors do actually have a replacement for this as opposed to reaching out to Gigabyte. Unfortunately, the little regular screw-on antennas do not work on these. I do find this much easier to actually deal with in terms of connection, but obviously take into consideration that it may be a little hard to replace as well too. So that's another little option you might want to consider as well when looking at these particular Gigabyte motherboards. We do see all basically the I/O layout here in the back. Some other details here. Little QR codes there just for the manual and other stuff as well too. So let's go ahead and get this unboxed. Looking forward to seeing this. Here we can still see the box within the box thing. The box obviously much smaller, a good inch and a half smaller, maybe even 2 inches smaller than the regular size version here. Looks a little ripped here a little bit, whatever. And we do have our motherboard. I'm going to go ahead and just remove that for a moment. Let's take a look at what we have. We do have in glacier ice color over here, we do have 2 SATA cables. Here is that Wi-Fi antenna, very nice. Here is a very nice little detail that Gigabyte's actually been throwing in. Basically, you do plug in your front panel connections into this, and then this goes into basically the motherboard where all the pins are for front panel devices. Much easier to go ahead and manipulate when you're disconnecting and reconnecting stuff from the board. We do have here a list of B850 chipset-based motherboards that are available or will be available from Gigabyte. Other little details there. Multilingual installation guide, and you review, we reward. Little thing over here. You have an Aorus, a little sticker here. You can go ahead and slap that on your case if you choose to do so. Go ahead and adjust this here a little bit and give you a first view of our wonderful looking motherboard right there. Let's go ahead and do a quick overview of the motherboard, take a look at some connections it actually has to offer, starting with the CPU socket right here, one of the primary things on any motherboard. AM5 socket for AMD Ryzen's generation 7000, 8000, and 9000 series of CPUs. Here you can go ahead and see the full AMD 5 socket right there, all pinless basically on the CPU. All the pins are now on the motherboard. Little plastic protection over here. Go ahead and keep that safe if you're planning to go ahead and possibly disassemble this motherboard and decommission it for a while. You definitely will need to put this on just to avoid from foreign material getting onto the pins, dust, or even the pins getting bent, which is even worse than that. Just below, we do have our main PCI Express slot over here with the little silver EMI protection and also physical protection here. Little lever right over here, which is really nice. It does have the little easy release button right over here. And you see that. Once I go ahead and press it, the little lever actually moves on the right side, allowing for the video card and the little latch under here that the video cards have built in to just easily come out. Feel free to go ahead and just close it and just hit it again. Very, very easy to manipulate. This is a little option that I'm really enjoying to see motherboards do, because obviously as video cards get ever so slightly huger in length and now in width as well too, using up even up to 3 or 4 PCI lanes and having to remove more blanks from the back of the computer. This is actually becomes much more harder to actually access, especially if you do have a large heatsink here, and obviously you basically need like a 5-year-old finger to actually go ahead and reach this particular area, which can be really challenging. So obviously this little button here does make things much easier. Just below here, we do have a little heatsink covering our May NVMe slot for our M2 drives. Oh, I'm sorry, M2 slot for our NVMe drives. How many times have I gotten those mixed up? You do have a little lever right over here. Go ahead and move this over a little bit. See that? Just go ahead and just basically hit this little latch, and the entire thing actually comes right off. There we go. And it looks like we are taking a look here at 2 NVMe slots. One of them probably being the primary one, usually the top, and the bottom one just being a secondary, which is probably controlled by the chipset or the CPU as well too. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that in the manual. We also do get a glimpse of our CMOS battery here as well too. Very easy to access. Though unfortunately with the positioning here, if you do have a video card that does take up a couple of slots and will be blocking this entire area, the video card will need to be removed if you're planning to go ahead and install an NVMe drive here, or even go ahead and remove the CMOS battery just to go ahead and reseat the CMOS the old-fashioned way. So just keep that in mind as well too. And obviously when you go ahead and install, go ahead and install your NVMe drive. Just remove the little plastic piece over here, plastic film. They'll allow this basically thermal pad right over here to make contact with your NVMe drive, and allow it to avoid throttling and getting too warm. Here we are, we're taking a look at all the I/O ports on the back of the motherboard, which will basically be the back of your computer case once everything's installed. On the left, we do see a main display port right over here. Basically, if your CPU is going to be, does have integrated graphics and you will be utilizing that, this will be one of your connections available for you. Display port right there to go ahead and connect your monitor and get display. To the right of that, we do have this little G-Flash button right over here. There is a USB thumb drive here completely dedicated for flashing. I'm thinking it's probably going to be this one over here from the extra BIOS label I see. Let's go ahead and take a look at that in a moment. If you want to go ahead and flash this motherboard without the need of a CPU or memory, this will be the little button you'll press. Just follow the instructions on how to go ahead and get the process going and have your USB thumb drive with the latest firmware you're planning to update to plugged into the correct USB port. To the right over here, we do have 4 USB 2.0 connections here. Why USB 2? These are actually really made for just keyboard, mice, cameras, printers, other devices that don't necessarily need a high speed of transfer like an external hard drive or stuff like that, or maybe even plugging in your smartphone. So these are actually very used there for those particular devices. Why use up all that bandwidth on basically a device that not even going to take advantage of it. To the right over here, we do have one USB-C port, and as my understanding, you can actually use this also for display. A very high-speed USB-C Type-C port right over here, and above it we do have a USB 3.2 port in blue color. To the right of that, looks like we have some additional USB 3.2 ports here. Yep, all of them are color-coded in blue, and to the right we have 2 additional ones color-coded in red. There, of course, is that little USB port that does have a little word BIOS over it. I'm guessing that's where your USB thumb drive will need to be plugged in if you plan to flash and update the firmware on this motherboard without the need of a CPU or memory. And up here we do have our 2.5G LAN connection here. If you plan to use this computer on LAN connection there, that is your connection right there. And very nice to actually see that it's 2.5G. I've actually seen motherboards, particularly from MSI, using 5G as their initial offering there. So 2.5G is really nice as well too. And to the right over here, we do have our Wi-Fi connection there. go ahead and plug in that little Wi-Fi antenna. Very easy, just plug it in as opposed to using the screws. I'm pretty sure some replacements are available from third-party manufacturers as well too. And finally, to the right, we do have our audio connections here. We do have one SPDIF connection down here, optical connection. And we do have, looks like, a line out and a microphone line in connection right over there. Let's go ahead and do a quick overview of some connections we do see on the motherboard that are available to you. Starting with the lower left of the board is our front panel audio connection. If your case does have those little connections there, such as a connection for stereo and mic, usually really originally geared for headphones, go ahead and plug that in here if you choose to do so. Not many cases actually have those connections much anymore, but there it is, available for you as well too. And yes, some dedicated sound cards do have that connection available too. To the right, it looks like we have three. Actually, I apologize. It looks like we have get a closer look here. We do have two 3-pin RGB connections here, and we do have one 4-pin right over here. So a couple of options here that you can go ahead and plug in your LED little RGB cables to, and other little things like that, such as fans and pretty much everything else. I'm pretty sure there's going to be additional connections around the board. Let's go ahead and take a look at that in a moment. Right over here, we do have a little connection here for dedicated for TPM. If you're planning to plug in a TPM module, not too popular. But if you are, that's the connection you'll be using right there. To the right of that, we do have two 4-pin fan connections labeled system fan, looks like 1 and 2. My eyes aren't that great, but I'm actually taking a look here. 1 and 2, and go ahead and plug in your system fans right there. There'll definitely be some additional connections. I'm already peeking on the motherboard itself, and I can already see some additional connections available for you as well. Further on the right, we do have two USB 2.0 front panel connections. If your case does have those connections there that are actually USB 2.0, not 3.2 or USB Type-C, these will be the connections you'll be using for that. While not too popular on computer cases these days, unless your case is probably over 10 years old, these can be utilized for other devices, such as a power supply that I have seen that does have a connection for this, to utilize and monitor voltage and our fan RPM speeds and whatnot. Very useful for that. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some other connections that use these as well too. They're available there for you if needed. And I did tell you there are going to be some more fan connections here. We do have number 3 and number 4, two additional 4-pin fan connections. And right to the right of that, just to jump to it, is our front panel connections over here, including basically your hard drive activity monitor, power LED, power button, and even the 4-pin speaker. That little connection that I demonstrated earlier from Gigabyte that came out of the box makes this much easier to go ahead and connect everything to that, and then you just connect that entire item right over here. Continuing here on the right of the motherboard, we do have our front panel USB 3.2 connection right over here. If you do have those blue or red USB ports on the front of your case, this is a connection you'll be going ahead and utilize for that right there. To the right over here, we do have 4 SATA connections, which is really nice. I was thinking maybe this only have 2, but has the usual number of 4 these days on new motherboard releases. Becoming less and less popular now because of the introduction of M2 slots for NVMe drives. These are actually slowly starting to disappear. Motherboards previously usually actually had about 8 of them, 6 of them on maybe Micro-ATX boards just like this. And here we have 4 of them available for you. Really useful for plugging in a mechanical hard drive that's going to complement your fairly fast NVMe drive, which obviously may not have too much storage capability at this time. Further to the right there, just underneath the little quick latch button there for the main PCI Express slot, we do have our front panel USB Type-C connection right here. Hopefully that's becoming a little easier for me to say. I always keep saying USB-C. So there's our connection right there. If your case does have that, becoming much more popular, go ahead and plug that little cable right there to take advantage of the connection right here. And a little bit out of sorts right over here is this HDMI connection there. And I've been informed that's actually really used for diagnostics and stuff like that. That connection is available there, while probably not going to be used for many end users on, basically just building up a computer. But that connection is available to you to use as well. Two things to take a look at over here. We do have our 24-pin power supply connection here. Just go ahead and give all that energy and power to the entire motherboard. Give some power to PCI Express slots and whatnot. Obviously not enough power to go ahead and give power to a NVIDIA 4090 or something like that. Those video cards use their own connections. Up here we do have our 4 DIMM slots here. Really nice to see. I was thinking maybe this was only going to have 2, but a total of 4. Go ahead and plug in all your DDR5 memory chips here. I'm going to go ahead and move this over a little bit just to demonstrate that I'll be using this one and this one, ideal for a dual channel setup. Almost actually missed it right over here. We do have an additional 3-pin RGB LED connection here. Very useful to, basically if you do have objects that use LED connections on the top of your case, this will probably be much easier accessible for that. And right over here, go ahead and focus on that a little better, are 2 additional 4-pin fan connections here. One of them probably being dedicated for CPU, and one of them dedicated for pump. Basically, if you plan to use water cooling. Looks like one of them actually says CPU OPT, probably for optional. I'm guessing that's probably something very similar to the pump fan. So go ahead and plug that in if you plan to use that there as well. The heat sinks are actually really nice and feel really solid, especially this one. Look at that. Nice and thick. Right over here, all the way hiding in just in the middle of everything, we do have our 8-pin CPU power connection. Now, I have previously mentioned before that some motherboards come with 2 of these or come with an 8-pin, and also to complement that, a 4-pin usually right next to it. But in this case, we only have one 8-pin connection over here. So go ahead and plug that in for your CPU power. Obviously, if you plan to overclock a 170-watt CPU or go crazy with that, this may not be the motherboard for you because it doesn't have any additional power connections for CPU. But as I mentioned before, for regular non-overclocking use or very little overclocking, this is basically all you'll actually need. And that is a quick overview of the motherboard itself with a bunch of connections that are available to you. Really nice to see that even though the size of the motherboard is a little bit smaller than the regular mid-ATX variant, that the connections are definitely not lacking here at all. You do have your front panel connections here, decent amount of USB connections, and decent amount of ports here and whatnot, NVMe M2 slots available for you. So let's go ahead and hit it, get a CPU installed, memory, get this into a case, and get it going. All right, looks like we're up and running here. The board actually took a little while to post, just like the other Gigabyte motherboards I've actually reviewed on just about a minute or so, a little bit under, I would say. But here we are. Hope everyone enjoyed that build process. Very unique computer case, that Cooler Master computer case, in case anyone's wondering what brand that is. A little bit on the less pricey side, that's for sure. But not too much. I can't really say I enjoy the cable management towards the back. Very little options there, but you get what you pay for. I do have this particular little computer, something in mind for it. If you're enjoying this build, the motherboard review, go ahead and shoot that like and subscribe button. Hit it. And definitely be checking out some additional motherboard reviews that I do have coming up. Let's go ahead and hit it and take a look here. We are in easy mode here, very similar to other motherboard manufacturers. We do have an easy mode and some sort of a degree of an advanced mode. And over here, this very odd graphic up here just really looks like TV static. I did actually see something similar to this on MSI's board, and one of MSI's board and other Gigabyte boards. It just looks really odd. Almost looks like the BIOS is glitchy. But anyway, up here, go ahead and click here if you want to go ahead and adjust the date and time, as you can see. Over here in the middle, looks like we have some information here, a full CPU frequency, CPU temperature, CPU voltage at the moment, memory frequency. There's actually some generic crucial memory chip, so I'm not going to be pushing this in to any higher speed or engage in any particular memory profile that may be built into the memory chips. And system temperature here as well too. My apartment's actually a little bit on the toastier side. When I did actually have this booted up previously, just for first looks, looks like it was like in the upper 20s or mid 20s. Now it's in the 30s, but room temperature definitely does make a difference. On the left side, we have some additional information here, the full name of your motherboard, the current BIOS version, CPU right over here, total memory, 16 gigs, and the AGSCA version right over here. Just below, it looks like we have DRAM status, obviously occupying 2 slots here, 2 DIMM slots from all 4. You can immediately see each one, crucial 8 gigabytes, adding up to 16. Down here, we do have the option to go ahead and engage the XMP Expo profile for Intel and Ryzen CPUs. Excuse me. Whatever profile the memory chip is geared for, your Intel or Ryzen CPU. That's what I wanted to say. And go ahead and engage that profile if your memory chips do actually have one installed and built in. Below here, looks like we have some other options that are currently grayed out because this is currently disabled. In the center here, we do have CPU Smart Fan 6 right over here. Well, we do have the CPU fan speed and other fan speeds here as well too. I'm not currently using the CPU optional fan, so that's currently grayed out. You click here. One of my favorite sections in any motherboard here is go ahead and manipulate fan RPMs and temperature, basically your temperature in terms of Celsius, and just basically mess around and manipulate the thresholds, obviously increase fan RPMs for faster speed, and whenever it hits a particular temperature threshold. Obviously, faster speed fans will mean more noise, so just obviously keep that in mind. Do have some options here as well too to go ahead and change some other settings regarding any particular fan you go ahead and choose. Here, of course, is right there is our system fan. You can immediately see that there. Right next to that, right to the right, we do have all the devices that are currently plugged in. I do have multiple SSDs and a physical mechanical hard drive plugged in. Here's our SSD, Samsung 840 Pro. A little on the old side, but again, I do have something in mind for this particular computer build. Over here on one of the SATA slots, we do have our mechanical hard drive, a little 4 terabyte hard drive right there. And down here, we have our little generic Quadro NVIDIA video card right over here. Nothing special, just something to get the machine booted up and get display going. On the right over here, we do have our boot sequence. You can immediately see this, the SSD already has a copy of Windows installed. You can immediately see Windows Boot Manager is available. If you didn't have actually one here available, you would just have the option to go ahead and choose other devices to go ahead and boot from, or if there's nothing installed on your SSD, it may actually turn it to be blank. Down here on the bottom, we do have the option to go ahead and engage QFlash. I did actually go ahead and update the BIOS to a particular version here, but I'm going to go ahead and get into that in just a moment. Some other options down here, resource bar support, CSM support down here. Speed info, go ahead and click on that. You immediately see options to go ahead and manipulate DIMM slot speeds over here, and timings as well too. Preferred operating mode, go ahead and choose audio, or you can go ahead and choose the option you prefer to do here. Easy mode, advanced. Fast boot here. If I recall, if you turn this on, I believe the motherboard just doesn't necessarily post faster, even though I'm pretty sure it does to some degree, but it actually just boots up much faster. If you're trying to engage into the BIOS, you may be a little disappointed having this option on. Hitting the delete key won't render any results, so just keep that in mind. If you do engage in the BIOS quite frequently, you might want to leave this option off, unless of course you're absolutely done and satisfied with the changes you made, and you won't be doing any more changes at the moment. Speed setup over here. Some additional timings here for the memory. Multi-theme, I guess maybe you can go ahead and change basically what the theme set of your BIOS. Probably going to need to reboot that for the changes to take effect. And ERP as well too. Up on the top, I did actually go ahead and skip over this. Go ahead and click on this little button here, or F1, to get some additional help. English, go ahead and go ahead and change into a different language. I'm going to go ahead and get back to this in just a moment, because I did actually see a little bit of a goof on Gigabyte's part regarding that. Load defaults, click here to go ahead and load optimized defaults. If you actually did change something here, you forgot what it was and just want to go ahead and just start over, here's your setting that you prefer to actually go ahead and engage. Save and exit, go ahead and click here if you want to go ahead and save your changes and exit the BIOS. You'll probably get a little confirmation window as you see here. Favorites, go ahead and click on F11 to actually see any favorites that have already been preset. And search, go ahead and click here to go ahead and type in a search query and immediately jump over to that particular option once you get your results here. And that is pretty much it for easy mode here. I'm going to go ahead and click on advanced. And I'm going to point out something immediately that is a little annoying, and I'm going to really reach out to Gigabyte about it because it's probably just one of the goofiest things I've ever seen in the motherboard. So as I did mention back here, I did find out a little bit of a goof here regarding language. Right now currently set to English, as you see. But clicking over to advanced, once you hover over or click on a particular option here, on the bottom, you'll see a little bit of a description down here, obviously CPU ratio mode. What else is there to say about that? Advanced CPU settings, you immediately see the problem we have here. I am bilingual, so I can immediately tell you that this is Spanish down here. Basically just repeating and letting you know what the advanced CPU settings is. Ajuste y afina la configuración avanzada del CPU. Basically change and fine-tune configuration of your CPU. And we're in English, but we actually do see some settings here in some descriptions in English and others in Spanish, which is right here. We do have another one in English and another one here in Spanish. Control of well, spectrum control right over here. So a little bit of a glitch, and I did want to actually call out Gigabyte for this because I did actually update to a later BIOS that's basically dated from late February. We're now in the early week of March. And still saw the same issue here, so probably something that you really need to work on. I don't recall if I actually saw this in the original BIOS firmware release, because I basically, once I went in here, I updated the BIOS immediately, just to actually give you guys the most updated availability and options and features this motherboard can offer. And obviously this is not necessarily what I was referring to when I said, changes and things to offer. Here's another one. So just bear that in mind. You might actually find this a little annoying. I'm pretty sure Gigabyte will hit it and correct this at some point. I did actually go ahead and change the description to Spanish, and I noticed the complete opposite. Basically everything here is described in Spanish, and then every now and then you see some in English. So just a little bit of a meh moment right there. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue here. Some of the buttons here have changed. We do have our favorites button up here. Tweaker, obviously, you can go ahead and see some options you can go ahead and change regarding your CPU, advanced CPU settings over here. You immediately see some other options regarding that. CPU boosts performance, and you immediately go ahead and change that. Now, another little thing I wanted to call out Gigabyte a little bit that I have noticed in other motherboards. Usually, if you want to just go back one step and go back to the menu you were just at before, usually just hit the escape key, which it seems like it's working here. Whoa, I did not actually test that, but hold on that thought here. and we'll get to that in just a moment. Some other options here regarding, again, memory, XMP Expo profile, system memory multiplier, and some other options over here. Jump into advanced memory settings, and you immediately see these settings that are available over here. Scrolling down here, we do see some additional options here for your CPU, like vCore. Looks like some voltage settings, additional voltage settings here. Obviously, be really careful when manipulating these particular settings because you could potentially damage hardware. Maybe not so much damage, but just maybe push your system into a state of instability, cause it to crash or not particularly post. Some other options on here regarding CPU VRM settings. Again, a little goof with Spanish. Looks like it's a little bit more widespread than I thought. That can be a little bit of an irritating thing right here. Forcing you to just pull out a phone and go into some translate app and just basically take a snapshot or just live translate it right over here. Going over into settings over here, we do have some options here regarding changing some settings on built-in devices on your motherboard. Let's go ahead and just do a quick skim over here. Platform power. Here are your options. That's what I was talking about earlier. So hitting escape doesn't necessarily bring me back to the previous menu over here. That can be a little irritating. Just brings up the menu about exit without saving. If you want to jump back to the original menu, just click on the same button up here. Here you go. Just a little thing they should really keep consistent on the BIOS. Is the escape going to take you back to the previous menu or is it not? So Gigabyte, take note on that if you are seeing this. If not, well, someone let them know and give them a shout out. I/O ports, some other additional options over here. You can go ahead and manipulate some built-in devices down here, USB configuration, SATA configuration, probably even enable and disable built-in devices such as your sound card, and choose your integrated graphics, etc., right over here. Nope, that didn't work either. Miscellaneous, some other settings over here. Here is TPM, in case you're looking for it. AMD CBS, common settings for your, basically just go ahead and just manipulate or just browse some common settings for each particular option you see here. Just click here if you want to see the most common options here for your CPU. Thread enablement, performance, for example. And there we go. You know, hitting escape does basically take you a step back in the menu. They gotta keep that consistent at some point. AMD overclocking obviously going to be presented here over this menu here. Regarding the warning for potentially damaging your hardware, overclocking and what like that. So just be really careful and be knowledgeable about the settings you're changing here. Manual CPU overclocking. Frequency. Be really careful with that. DDR frequency timing changes. Precision boost overdrive, which I usually disable just for the sake of lowering down the temperature of the CPU and also just basically just for display purposes when navigating the BIOS. Voltage control. Another setting here, LN2 mode. Onboard voltage control. Stuff to keep really careful here when you're manipulating it. PC health. Right over here. Something really odd, if you just notice, I actually did hit the escape key and now I ended up in another menu that's completely different, a little baffling. Again, Gigabyte, just something to just really try to keep consistent, and of course still being hit with different language descriptions even though we're in English. But over here we do have advanced frequency settings, advanced memory settings, voltage, PC health again, miscellaneous settings as we saw before, DDR voltage control, favorites, smart fan, speed info, speed setup, and Q flash. Very similar settings to what we saw in easy mode. System information, much more thorough information regarding your motherboard, BIOS state, BIOS version, everything else, system language right over here. Pretty ironic that it's describing the system language even though it's in Spanish down here. Full processor information here. And some additional information here below as well too. Boot, go ahead and use the drop-down menu to choose the boot devices as you see fit for your computer. Go ahead and enable disable CSM support. Go ahead and enable a administrator password to make changes and save changes in the BIOS. And secure boot here as well too. Preferred operating mode. Oh yeah, we've definitely covered that as well too already. And save and exit. If you click here, you do have some additional options. Instead of just immediately saving and exit, you can actually exit without saving. There's that option again to load optimized defaults, boot override, and basically you do see your options here for boot as well too. Save and load profiles. If you do have a USB thumb drive plugged in, you can immediately go ahead and save a profile and export it to your thumb drive, giving you the option to immediately go ahead and load it again. Once you go ahead and update the BIOS, these profiles may actually be wiped out, so a thumb drive is very helpful here. And not to be missed, on the bottom we do have the same SmartFan 6, QFlash, help, and your search function as well too, as the option up here to go ahead and change the date and time. Really hope a future BIOS firmware update really fixes it. This is actually a little computer that I do have in mind for something. And little things like that just kind of really discourage you from continuing to use the board, and even kind of give you a little bit of a buyer's remorse if it's been past the time period to go ahead and return the board or just go ahead and exchange it. Obviously, a motherboard that just basically has little glitches like this. Who knows what else may or may not be working, but I can definitely do a follow-up video if I do see any issues like that. I don't believe I noticed this particular kind of goof on the regular mid-ATX version of this particular motherboard, the regular Gigabyte B850 Aorus Ice version, and that motherboard actually looked like a really good seller and a deal breaker. But let's go ahead and see what happens here. Give Gigabyte a shot, perhaps, and update the BIOS. Hopefully they'll release one in March or April to correct some little things over here. Anyway, if you're enjoying this video so far, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Any questions, any comments as well too, go ahead and let me know. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and as always, stay safe. I will probably absolutely be doing a follow-up video on this. Definitely be doing some on my motherboards that I've actually reviewed, particularly this one over here. Just seems like a little bit of a small little goof, but still something that just makes you question the quality control and if there might potentially be some other issues with the board. Take care, everyone. As always, stay safe. Bye-bye. Thought I'd go ahead and just demonstrate the finished product here again. I did actually do some wire management on the case itself. Also added an additional little fan there. Sorry about the light reflection on the right over here. But I just wanted to go ahead and demonstrate this. This room is actually, it's a little storage room here, and this computer is going to be used like basically like a little server, and that's why it's in complete darkness and I have the light on right now. So much nicer. You do see a nice little LED, little glare right there. And it's probably the only little LED I think there is on this particular computer. So everything looking really nice and working pretty well.